So throughout our history on this planet, which has been relatively short, we've accomplished so many great things, from traveling into space to looking at these tiny little particles in an electron microscope. But we must ask ourselves, do these things make ourselves the most intelligent animal? Since the dawn of science, it's generally been argued that we have been. But recently, there's been a lot of discoveries showing that there's been evidence of intelligence in other life forms on this planet. So before we begin to explore this controversy, we must ask ourselves, what is intelligence? And this in itself is a really controversial topic because what's intelligent for us might not be intelligent for another animal because they have different adaptations than us. An example of this, and my zoology professor actually talked about this on Monday, yay.
Yeah.
The most intelligent invertebrate, an octopus, might think that we lack emotion because we can't change color like they can. So for the purposes of this speech, intelligence is defined as the ability to adapt, shape, and select an environment, to judge, comprehend, and reason, to interact with the environment, and to act purposefully and rationally. So based on this definition, as I said earlier, this is really debated in the scientific community right now. And actually yesterday I just found a new article on this topic, which I'll get to later. But so I've gathered sources from Wall Street Journal, PLOS1, which is a peer-reviewed scientific journal, developmental psychology, and more to educate you today. So since we're all intelligent beings here, I hope you're all hungry to learn about this debate. And we will examine how both us and other animals utilize tools, our cognitive abilities, and how we use language. So first, let's look at the arguments for our intelligence. Scientists who say that we are the most intelligent species will most likely say that we are the only species able to utilize advanced technology, so things like spaceships, airplanes. I mean, you won't see a monkey building a spaceship and shooting itself up into space. So I don't know what this guy is so excited about. He might be watching March Madness at work or something. I don't know. But the point is that we have these forms of technology to enrich our lives and that make it easier to live in this world. And a lot of animals, you know, they don't have tools like we do, like cell phones, things like that. And so second, we possess really unique and complex and advanced cognitive abilities. And for those of you who haven't taken like a science or a psych class, cognition is basically the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. And a big component of cognition that really enhances it is called white matter, which is composed of neurons and the myelin sheath. And neurons are basically these cells that transmit these electrical signals throughout our entire body that allow us to move, talk, and interact with the environment. And the myelin sheath is just this fatty layer that surrounds the neuron and that helps propagate these signals faster. And so this white matter in us, according to a study conducted by Singer, is more abundant in us than in other animals. And in another recent study published this year, there was a correlation found between these neural connections and cognition. And this leads us to my final point for our intelligence. We have a remarkably sophisticated language system. So you know by now, you've all taken this English class, and you know, we have all these complex rules of grammar, symbolism, and how to understand them. And so we are able to produce a wide variety of these words. I don't know, maybe cuss words in this argument. Well, animal dialects, according to Deacon in his book, which is actually really interesting, are narrow and limited. And he also found that we have more voluntary control over speech than, you know, other animals that utilize language. And for those, and just to give a simple definition, language is basically the ability to acquire and use complex systems of communication. So on the flip side, there are some scientists that now believe that we may not be the most intelligent animal on this planet. And animals come up with really innovative ways to manipulate their environment. And you know, these skills need to be like developed over time so they're not like instinctual. One example of this is this really cool pod off the coast of South Carolina. A scientist named Kuzad, it's a really weird name, released a study in January this year of this pod. And what they'll do is one dolphin will create this net of mud to trap the fish, and the fish will fly up into the air, into the mouth of these dolphins waiting. And she found that they have to communicate with each other throughout this whole entire thing to be in the right position and to get the timing right. And that also requires a lot of problem-solving ability to manipulate the environment, which is what this is about basically. Even though it may not be like hand tools like what we use and manipulating the water to work for them. And our next point, which this kind of leads into, is some animals like dolphins and other whales have advanced and possibly superior cognition and memorization abilities. So according to the famous scientist Carl Sagan, dolphin brains are second only to humans in terms of brain size to body size. And this is incredibly important when looking into cognition because this correlates heavily. I mean, you can see just by the size comparatively. And another big component of cognition is the wrinkles and folds in the brain, and this process is called gyrification. And killer whales have the most gyre brain of all. And on the measuring scale for this, they're ranked as a 5.7 compared to our 2.2. And this is according to David Newart, who released a book on this topic earlier in the year. Cetacean brains, he found, have highly developed parts associated with emotional learning, long-term memory, self-awareness, and focus. All these things that we find unique to ourselves, Newart argues, does exist in other places. And dolphins are also the only other mammal besides us that demonstrates extensive mimicry behavior. So, if you've gone to places like SeaWorld, you might have heard them imitate like fire sirens, things like that. It's really interesting, and that leads us to our next point, which is that dolphins and other whales and even other animals have these really complicated language systems. Move on. So according to Rees, they exhibit a large repertoire of complex vocalizations from clicks, squawks, whistles, and these can be controlled really well through a system in their blowhole, their nasal system basically. And they also possess a signature whistle or name, and I did have a video to show you, but I don't think we'll have enough time for it, so sorry. So in summary, some scientists still argue that we are the most intelligent animal because of these forms of advanced technology that other animals do not have, and we also have these really unique language and cognitive abilities. But on the flip side, many animals also come up with creative ways to manipulate their environment, and some species, such as cetaceans or dolphins and other whales, may even surpass their cognitive and language abilities. So now that we have explored this debate, we must ask ourselves another question. Are we wiser than animals? The author Mark Twain believes that we are not, because the fact that we know right from wrong and still do these horrible things makes us morally inferior to creatures that cannot. So, we're the only species that conducts mass genocide. Well, species like killer whales will never attack themselves. On the flip side to that, George Bernard Shaw argues that we are made wise not by the recollection of our past and maybe these horrible things, but by the responsibility for our future. So he's saying that we are wise because we're being responsible for our future, and we can still be wise if we're being responsible. So using this information, I want you to not only ask yourselves, are we the most intelligent animal, but also, are we wiser? You decide. Thank you.